Welcome to Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, the home for financial advice in a language you can understand. Created by Marc Freedman of Freedman Financial, he and his team of certified financial planner professionals will discuss timely topics that help individuals and families make smart financial decisions. And now, get ready for this week's edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial.
Welcome back to another edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial. My name is Marc Freedman.
And I'm Christian Karcher.
And I'm sitting in a different seat today.
Oh, we swapped.
Well, no, usually you sit in this seat, but when I'm with Marion, I'm over here. So
we do like to confuse people.
Although
I don't know how many people are watching us.
That is true. Maybe someone will notice, but it's odd for me to be sitting on this side because it's been a while since you and I have done a podcast.
It has. I've done a few with Marion since we last met, but here we are, back together.
Back together. And look, you even brought a blue suit today.
I did.
I did not. So Jody's telling me that pink might not be my color, but I don't know.
Well,
we'll see.
This will get people to really watch the video instead of just listening to the podcast.
Exactly. Well, we are here with some financial advice in a language you can understand today. You know, each week we bring up different topics, things that we hear in the office, and we've got some interesting perspectives we've been sharing because this week and the past month or so, we've been faced with a similar question but different circumstances with a bunch of people, and maybe you can kind of offer them some perspective of what that looks like, Christian.
Absolutely. So the one thing that will happen to everyone's financial plan is there will be an end to it.
Yep.
You will die one day.
Someday.
And who gets the money at the end? And a lot of people have, beneficiaries lined up. They might have kids. They know what they want to do. But you're never going to be there to see it actually executed.
You hope it works out the way you wanted.
So how do you know it's going to be executed properly? And also, when you start getting into some interesting situations where you might have a remarriage, or you might have a remarriage where you both have kids from a previous marriage, and you've never really sat down and talked about, okay, how do we want this to be divided up? The other thing that we've gotten recently is there are some people who have accumulated great wealth, don't like to spend too much money, and are going to leave a huge inheritance. The problem? They don't know who they want to leave it to. So all of these
because they don't have children.
Because they don't have children, or they don't have anyone close to them that they are really adamant on leaving money to. And so all of these are questions that are important to ask before the end of that plan comes, so that you can plan ahead and have it executed in the way that you actually want.
And sadly, we've seen some of those instances where there were couples with no children. They had not really figured out where they wanted to leave their money. And sadly, and it was the only time that we've seen something where it was a tragic accident where one person passed away right away, and the other person, actually they got better, but they were in a coma for a long period of time, and there was a lot of uncertainty as to where this money was going to go because there was no planning as well. But I know, Christian, we talk about these second marriages, third marriages, and what are some of the assumptions that people make that might surprise them about how they're leaving their money?
Yeah, especially with a second marriage, if you both have children previously, one of the things that people often assume is, okay, our money, I want it to be there for my new spouse if I were to pass away previously, but when they die, I want to make sure that my own kids from a first marriage get the money.
Right.
However, with rules, particularly retirement accounts, you oftentimes want to name a beneficiary. You want to name your spouse as the beneficiary because spouses get preferred tax treatment on retirement accounts when they inherit them. The problem is once your spouse inherits that IRA, it is an IRA in their own name, and they can change it to whoever they want as their beneficiaries. And if you don't have a conversation beforehand or a level of trust in knowing that, okay, I want to make sure some of this money gets to my own kids from a first marriage, well, that can cause some friction.
Yeah, and we oftentimes see this misunderstanding of folks that says, well, I have a will, and the will take care of all of that stuff. Well, that works when there is no beneficiary designated. But in an IRA, there generally is beneficiaries designated. Same with insurance policies and things like that. If you have an individual account where you didn't have a beneficiary named, perhaps the will step in and will go through probate first to start, and then decide who's going to get the money. But in this case, imagine this. Imagine there's a couple that comes together, second marriage for both of them. One had 2 children, one had 3 children. And the person that's 3 children has, let's say, 80% of the assets in the household. And his largest asset happens to be an IRA. And when he dies, he wants to make sure that his spouse gets the money and she can use it however she wants.
To continue to live.
Right.
Absolutely.
But it's also his belief or hope that when the second spouse passes away, that his children will get the remainder of the money. Yet we brought to light to their attention that that's not quite the way it's going to work, that it could work that way, but you've got to be pretty careful.
It would require that the surviving spouse make sure to name their deceased spouse kids as her own beneficiaries on that account. And that is something that can be changed at any time.
Right. And
so like I said, it requires a level of trust there, and at least some communication to say, this is what I want to happen, and then you never know what actually will happen.
Yeah, because remember, once you're dead, that survivor can do whatever they want unless you've written something in stone. And sometimes the option, we hear the word of a trust, becomes a solution in those cases because it clearly distinguishes who's going to get what. And some people might say, well, a trust is expensive. I might have to pay more taxes on a trust. All of these different things. Those answers may all be yes to those questions. But if it's helping you deliver the outcome that you want, it's important that you explore it.
Absolutely. And so what we do in the office is, I think step one for people with these complicated situations is to say, okay, let us lay out how this would work today. A lot of people have never sat down and really thought about what are the different orders of operation here, and oh, I didn't even realize that it would go into my spouse's name solely. Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't realize that. So going through and saying, this is how it's going to work out right now. Is that what you want? And then from there, we can come up with creative solutions. You talked about using trust. There's also, some people might say, I've got my retirement assets. I'll give that to my spouse because that's efficient that way. And I might have an investment account that I'll name my children on. There's no great answer in that situation, but it's all going to depend on what you're most comfortable with.
Yeah, it's the answer that most financial advisors give to their clients, and the answer is generally, it depends. And that's not the answer you're looking for. But that's the answer where we have to start. It's the honest answer. It's the way where we look at everything, the big picture of your entire financial life, not just a slice in what I call the financial planning pie. And then, Christian, there's this situation where we've seen several of our clients who have never been married, and they've built up some significant wealth.
Absolutely. Yes, that happens regularly. And they start to say, when they're starting to think about estate planning, they go, well, who do I want to leave the money to? And there's usually a few suggestions we have. One of them is not estate planning related. Number one is
spend the money.
You can spend the money.
It amazes us how many people with significant wealth, and you can define what significant wealth is. I will say significant wealth in our office is, I don't know, $2 million or more. I mean, I guess you could call that significant wealth. It's not 20 million. It's not 40 million. Yes, that is significant wealth. But for our clients, significant wealth is $2 million or more or so. And so let's say you're in your 70s and you've got nobody to leave your money to, and you say, well, I just want to live off the interest or the distributions or dividends from my portfolio. Why? And you can ask yourself, why? And what are some of those conversation points that we have with them, Christian?
Well, we often ask why, and people say, well, I don't like spending money. I don't want to spend money on that. I feel foolish spending money on this. And that's how they accumulated the money in the first place.
Because we were always taught the importance of saving, yet nobody ever taught us how to spend the money.
Right. And so that money is meant to be spent. So number one, we encourage people to spend what they can. Sometimes it's just not feasible. They might say, I'm trying to spend as much money as I can. I just can't get through it, even when I'm trying really hard. And so the question becomes, who are you going to leave the money to? Oftentimes people will find, family members or charities that they like to give. We would encourage you, if you are in that situation and you want to leave money to charity at the end of your life, to start giving to charity while you are still alive.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you pass away and whoever is managing your estate writes a check, a very large check to any number of charities, the charity is going to take the check, they're going to send out a form letter that says thank you, and that'll be the end of it. So if you're charitably inclined, give to the charities while you're alive. Enjoy the benefits of being able to get a phone call and
let them celebrate you.
And at least hearing some of the good work that they're doing with the money that you donated, it's a great bonus.
And it's also a great way to save some money in taxes, too. You give some of this money to charity, You can reduce your tax liability. You can also get celebrated by these charities. Let them invite you to some of their galas or their events or their fundraising programs, or perhaps you name a charitable challenge as part of this not-for-profit that you're interested in. There's so many things you can do, and that's what we like to help you explore by visiting our office to say, look, let's do this right. The other thing that I notice a lot of people do, look, we've all grown up buying basically coach tickets to travel and staying, using every AAA discount we can find when we look for a hotel or a tour that we go on. You know, what's wrong with going business class? What's wrong with staying at a nice hotel? What's wrong with spending some big money to go on fancier tours or nicer dinners? And people just say, it's not what I do, Mark. I'm not used to that. I feel uncomfortable. Well, I assure you, when somebody else gets your money, they're not going to be as careful and thoughtful with the way they spend your money.
No, inheritances are very often spent quickly. I think that the statistic is out of 75% of people who receive an inheritance purchase a car within 6 months.
Yeah, it's people do also. Look at it this way. Let's just make it very simple. If you said to your kids, let's say you went out for dinner, and you said to your kids, get anything you want on the menu. And they start looking at the menu, they start choosing things they want, and they say, oh, by the way, you're paying tonight. All of a sudden, they think a little bit differently about paying for it. But if they said, if you just gave them money and said, spend it however you want, and because that's what you're doing when you leave money to another generation, to another person, they may spend it far differently than you ever would. So sometimes we've been, using this place of what if you could? We've been asking this question. So what if you could make sure that the money you've accumulated could get into the hands of the people you wanted to get into and get it used the way you had hoped it would be used? It's a long way to ask that question, but there's lots of things to think about. And that's what we do here at Freedman Financial. We're going to raise those important questions. We are going to focus on the financial planning aspects of your life, of course, along with your investments and every other component that relates to major financial decisions. So if now is the time for you to get serious about your financial planning and investment management needs, I hope you'll give us a call. We're here 978-531-8108. That's 978-531-8108. Or visit us on the web, freedmanfinancial.com. That's Freedman,
2 E's and a D.
Financial.com. All you have to do is, by the way, go to the bottom of any page on our website, put in your name and your email address, and you will be registered for our upcoming weekly newsletter that lands in your inbox every Friday, 10:30 in the morning. We've been sending this out since March of 2009. Yeah, a long time, never missed a week. We write it ourselves. It's not some boilerplate newsletter. It lands in your box. So that's going to do it for us this week. Christian, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
And we'll be back next week with more financial advice in a language you can understand. Have a great day, everyone.
During today's episode of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, your host may have discussed specific financial planning and investment ideas that are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Please remember that investing involves risk and may include loss of principal. Always consult a certified financial planner professional, qualified attorney, or tax advisor prior to investing to determine what is appropriate for you. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA, SIPC.